Welcome, everybody. Welcome to JavaScript Jam Live. What's up, Anthony, Philip? Lots of great people in here. Jen, Tech. Hey, what's up? What's up? Okay, Anthony is requesting to come up. I guess I'll add you as a speaker, dude. There you go. All righty.
Hacktoberfest.
All right, Ishan, invite to co-host. There you go. Invite sent. Can you guys hear me okay? Everything good?
I can hear you, yes. Can you hear my woos?
I can hear you woos.
Yeah.
Whoop, whoop. Cool. Guess what? I'm just pumped because I've got my Rodecaster Pro set up and my mic and everything. Finally, after a week of not doing that, I'm excited. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Today is JavaScript Jam Live. We do this every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And today, we're going to be talking about Hacktoberfest and some other things, open source, all that. We got some fun people coming and joining us today to be chatting about all this wonderfulness as well. So stick around. Maybe some people you know, including Anthony.
Hey, that's me.
Yeah, that guy. So JavaScript Jam, this is where we talk about everything and anything JavaScript, as well as, web development related. We like to call this like kind of like an open mic kind of thing, a little more casual. In fact, we love it when the audience gets involved. So if you have any questions or you have any statements or opinions or whatever it might be, please feel free to request to come up. More than happy to have you. And, it really helps the conversation keep flowing. Not just that, honestly, that's like where we get some of the best conversations, is when people in the audience are contributing and participating. So feel free to request and we will bring you up. Oh, look at that. Lots of requests coming in here. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to our co-host here, Ishan, to kick us off with the awesome conversation about Hacktoberfest and open source.
Yeah, thank you. So, as Scott said, we're an open mic on anything JavaScript and web development related. And Scott, if you get a chance, if you can put the link to the newsletter we send out, that usually has, a couple links for suggested topics. And this week, I think we had 3 topics suggested. One is obviously Hacktoberfest, which we'll talk about in a second, right around the corner. And hopefully we're getting, I think we're getting Brian Douglas and maybe Rizel from GitHub are going to join us as well to talk through Hacktoberfest. And then second, we can talk about this really popular article about React that made the rounds on, it seemed like every place in every developer forum. It was React, I love you, but you're bringing me down. And then the third thing was Quick, this new next generation framework, actually from the creator of the original AngularJS, hit beta. And we can talk about what makes Quick so cool and interesting. But those are some of the suggested topics. But again, we like to be audience driven as much as possible. And I see a bunch of requests already. Jen, good to see you. Anthony as well, another regular. I don't know if you guys had anything you wanted to add to the agenda that you wanted to talk about or comment on. And I see we got Trash and
Yeah, have you
Michael
met Trash?
as well.
Trash before, Ishan? He's a streamer buddy.
Oh, okay, very cool. Well, welcome to the club. Was there something you wanted to raise as an additional topic we can jump into? I'm happy to throw away the agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not a topic that we should get into. This is more of a teaser for a topic we should talk about next week. I know someone who happens to be a CEO at a database company who happens to have gotten Postgres working in the browser through Wasm. You can run a Linux VM inside of a WASM thing, and you can run an entire Postgres database in a browser tab.
I think I saw this on Hacker News.
All right,
No,
we'll
it
have to
hasn't even
jump
been
into
shared
that.
yet. Like it's on, like there's a GitHub for it, and so if you go to github.com/snaplet/Postgres-WASM, just Postgres, not PostgreSQL, then you will find that they're gonna put out a blog post about it on Monday, which is why I say this is like not really like news yet. This is like alpha, but it's super, super interesting, and I find it be an absolute mad scientist experiment.
So let's see if we can get them for, I'm gonna cheer for that. Where's the equivalent of the emoticon there?
Yeah, no, I'll put you in touch with Peter.
Yeah, that'll be great. I mean, here's I'll take a quick tangent on that. Like, I feel like it's a matter of time till everything gets emulated in a WASM. Like, it's the new container. It's the new, just like everything ended up in a VM and then ended up in a container. This is the new container. And WebAssembly as a technology is just really amazing and fascinating. The example that really blew me away was when they ran VS Code and Linux. I think StackBlitz did this, and Node entirely in the browser. So you get your entire app, and it's not just you're running VS Code in the browser. You're actually, when you type commands into, and you have Node execute, it's executing in your browser, which is crazy because you got V8 emulating Node, which includes V8. It's a little bit of like madness inception.
Russian nesting dolls of JavaScript.
Exactly. And I think I saw as well, somebody ran WordPress in the browser using WASM. I'll Google for that in a second if I get a chance.
Yeah, this is what kind of blew me away when Peter told me that they were doing it with like a Linux VM, because that made me realize it's like the fact that it's Postgres is kind of irrelevant at that point because you're running an entire operating system. So there's really no limit to what you could do once you've done that.
Wait, they put Postgres in a VM and then put that in WASM? Maybe we're jumping too far.
Yeah. So it's this thing called v86.js or x86. So if you go to github.com/copy/v86, it's x86 virtualization in your browser, recompile x86 to WASM on the fly. So yeah, it just like emulates like machine code. So it's like that was the whole point like of WASM. Like it's WebAssembly. So once you have an assembly language, you could just run anything. So you could run like an entire operating system.
Yeah, you could.
Well, they should or not is a completely separate question.
This is all fascinating material, I think, for next week. But I think WASM is such an interesting and fascinating technology. So I pulled it up, github.com/copy/v86. I found it, and it makes a lot of sense because what WASM is a better defined, I guess, virtual machine and instruction set. And this basically just takes anything that was compiled for your Intel CPU and just makes it work in WASM. And I feel like this is just the beginning of, everything in the browser. I guess let's put it this way. The first generation was you had a browser. And then the second generation of everything in the browser was you had maybe part of the interface for an application, but the backend ran on some server, whether it's Google Search or whether it's like Salesforce. And you had, let's call it a primitive UI. The third generation was, Ajax, where now you could have really application class UIs, but still there was a backend that needed to run way off in some server. And here we are at maybe the fourth or fifth generation, depending on how you count, where essentially the backend itself now can potentially run in the browser. Although more realistically, I think the best model for this might be what we've seen with native applications on mobile, where it's basically a thick client. So it's got a lot more code than you traditionally send to the browser, But I think it's now potentially everything. So that's really exciting because, it means you could have your entire dev environment as a developer, your application server, your database, and your code, running in the browser. You don't have to bother like installing or spinning up an environment. You could just be like, click on something and go to GitHub and boom, you've got your whole environment. The code editor all the way down to the database. I'm really excited for that WASM future. I mean, that's one of other things that WASM I think will allow us to do. That's really exciting. So, well, thank you for bringing that up. That's hugely interesting.
Yeah, I thought you'd nerd out on that.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to like hold
more
myself
next
back.
time.
Yeah.
Hold him back. By the
Yeah.
way, Rizel joined us. What's up? She's on stage. Hey.
Hey, Rizel.
What's up,
Hey.
y'all?
Yeah, thanks for being here. Let's get to the topic of the hour, so to speak, which is the highlight is Hacktoberfest, and we have Rizel, who's a developer advocate at GitHub, to walk us through kind of the ins and outs and get people oriented to Hacktoberfest. So before we jump into that, Rizel, why don't you just tell people a little bit about yourself? I've kind of introduced you as the GitHub developer advocate. The second thing I'll say is you were a speaker at the Composability Summit back at the end of July. You gave what I thought was one of the best styled slides. They had so much personality. I thought they were fantastic.
For sure.
Yeah. But let me give you just a few minutes, tell people about yourself, and then let's jump into Hacktoberfest. And thank you for being here.
Of course.
Can I cut in really quick just to say, y'all, Rizel's just fucking phenomenal, and everybody should be really excited that she's here, because we always have really cool stuff during JavaScript Jam, and having Rizel here is like double good.
Absolutely.
Thanks, y'all. Now I'm super gassed up, but I also have to like live up to everything y'all just said. Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed speaking at Composability Summit, and I always try to make my slides nice because I'm like, if the talk is bad, at least people will get like distracted by the slides and be like, I really like those. But yeah, my name is Rizel, y'all, and I'm a developer advocate. I'm a junior developer advocate at GitHub. Been here for a year. Before that, I was a software engineer, and for about like 3 years. And I like doing like nonprofit things on the side too, of like introducing like women of color, non-binary people of color to code. And I'm pumped about Hacktoberfest. I participated in it last year, but that's kind of when I just joined GitHub, so I'm really excited that I'm getting to be at like the beginning parts of it, what people call like Preptember. And I'm excited to tell y'all a little bit more.
Great. So let's start with, for people who have no context whatsoever, just tell them what Hacktoberfest is. It's been going on, I think, for 8 or 9 years. Just tell them just the brief history and what it is, and then we can keep going.
Yeah, Hacktoberfest is a month-long event in October. That DigitalOcean and GitHub and DigitalOcean are like in partnership, and they kind of use this time to encourage people to contribute to open source more. So I think a lot of the focus has always been on like first-time contributors, but that doesn't mean we're only limiting it to that. We want to encourage veteran contributors and first-time contributors to get involved in Hacktoberfest. And the way that it works is open source maintainers will find a bunch of like good first issues, or if people don't know what good first issues are, that's essentially issues that you can be able to contribute to, even if you've had not a lot of context about the project. And they'll label it Hacktoberfest in the issue, and that allows you to enter the competition. So you do have to register on the hacktoberfest.com website, but it allows you to enter the competition and win a couple of things. I don't remember what the awards are this year, but last year they like gave like free swag, and if you got 4 or more Hacktoberfest accepted pull requests, or you had the option to plant a tree in your name if you were like, I have enough swag, I don't need all that, like, let me give back in a different way. But it's essentially just a way for folks to help out maintainers to get their project to the end, and then also for folks to get a chance to participate in and discover more open source communities. And this year, which is going to be my last point, this year the push is going to be more on non-code contribution. So I know when people think open source, they're always thinking of like, this has to be a coding contribution. But if you're good at like project management or design or documentation, or you want to gain those skills, this is also a spot for you to practice. That's all.
Yeah, that last part I saw, and that's a really good point. I think too often, whether it's building websites or in an open source project, everyone thinks it's all about the code. And it's actually as much about, when you're building a site, it's as much about the content. Or when you're building an open source project, it's about the community. Or it's about, making sure it's easy for people to join that community. Those non-code contributions, I think, tend to be unfortunately undervalued, and they're actually extremely leveraged in the success of a project. It's almost less sometimes about the code than making sure people are aware of it. Just like the best product in the market doesn't always win, it's actually the one that most people know about. So it's really a great change to see that added. Regarding the prizes, this year I looked it up. It's 40,000 participants. So 40,000 people will get one of two prizes: a tree plant in their name, as you mentioned, or a Hacktoberfest 2022 shirt. Do you know, in past years, like, did they get enough participation that they actually ran out of shirts, or did they have any left over, or maybe you're not aware?
That's a good question. I haven't heard of them saying we ran out. Like,
Okay.
I'm sure they, if they're at a point where they need more, I feel like they just order more.
Yeah, so
we live in an age of abundance, or more shirts can always be made.
Yeah.
at least for t-shirts.
Yeah.
Well, t-shirts and currencies, evidently. But it's the quantitative easing of t-shirts. So yeah. And then the other thing that people should know is, for pull and merge requests is another thing you mentioned, and it has to be a GitHub repository that has the Hacktoberfest label on it.
Yeah.
And I believe GitLab is also qualifies
Yes,
to
they are
accept either.
participating too. Yeah,
Yeah.
GitLab or GitHub. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess if you're somebody who has never participated in Hacktoberfest before, what is like the best way to find a repo and get started, or find an issue? Maybe walk people through, like, on GitHub, I'm less familiar with GitLab, but at least on GitHub, you can search for that label. You can search for first issue. Do you want to just walk people through like how they would get started on that? And then they also need to first register on the Hacktoberfest site as well. So maybe you can talk just briefly through that and what people need to do.
Yeah, so definitely I would start with registering on the Hacktoberfest website. It's super easy. I signed up last night. It took me like 5 minutes, or probably even less. Basically, you just press register, and it's going to ask you if you want to authorize it with GitHub or GitLab, whichever platform you're used to. Go ahead and do that, and then it just asks for like your name and your like email address or something. Actually asks like, how do you want to participate? Like, do you want to participate as a contributor, maintainer, event organizer? Are you new to Hacktoberfest, or have you done this before? And are you more interested in code or non-code contributions? It's super, super quick to sign up. But I would do that just to make sure that you get your Hacktoberfest pull request. Now, if you were trying to find a project, there's a couple of ways to do that. But if you go to github.com/topics/Hacktoberfest, you will be able to see all the open source projects that have the label Hacktoberfest. And this indicates that like they're participating in Hacktoberfest for this year. And like, if I were y'all, I would start looking now in September, like October is coming pretty quickly to an end. I mean, it's starting pretty quickly, and September is coming to an end pretty quickly. Because I know that it's pretty Hacktoberfest is popular. Like you said, there's like 40,000 people participating, and like I want people to be able to get a chance to grab a ticket. So yeah, go to github.com/topic/Hacktoberfest, and you'll be able to scroll through different projects that you're interested in. Another option is like there's a couple options. Another one is like if you use a project a lot and you're aware that it's open source, or you can check and see if it's open source and has a repository on GitHub or GitLab, that's a good opportunity for you to check in and see if you can contribute to that project. Because if you've been using it, why not give back? But definitely make sure it has the Hacktoberfest label. And another option, if you want to contribute to open source, is there's a couple of like good first issue aggregators. So a couple of websites that finds all the good first issues out there that are good for people to get started. So you can go to, I think it's like firsttimersonly.com. That's like a really, really good one. You could also go to there's a Twitter account actually called Good First Issues. And what it does is anytime someone labels an issue a good first issue, it'll get tweeted out. But if you want to make sure that you get accepted to open source, then Hacktoberfest, then go ahead and make sure that it has that like Hacktoberfest label. Trying to think of other options, but I will say those are the three things. Like go through github.com/topics/Hacktoberfest, or look on firsttimersonly.com, or check out that Twitter account that's called Good First Issues, and you'll be able to find like a bunch of good first issues, and just make sure you can find that Hacktoberfest label. Yeah. But stop me so I stop rambling.
No. So, and I just want to underscore, like a
Yeah.
good first issue is one that the maintainer has said, it's the welcome mat laid out for you as a beginner to say, here's the best way to start getting, the best thing we need solved that isn't going to be super hard for you to get started and would be a great contribution. That's a great, call out for how people should get started looking for repositories with Hacktoberfest and good first issues.
Yeah.
I know there's a Discord you can join for Hacktoberfest.
There is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that and anything else, people should be doing in Preptember besides looking for issues and joining the Discord?
Yeah. Okay. So definitely, I should grab the link for y'all so you can pin it to the Twitter space. But definitely join the Hacktoberfest Discord, because in there they have people sharing their projects. They have announcements and news that pop up, because right now they're doing a couple of events. Like different organizations are doing events in preparation for or in celebration of Hacktoberfest, and those are really good events for you to be able to gain more context about open source. Um, in addition to that, when you brought up discords, I think another great call out is like if you join a project or you see an open source community on GitHub or GitLab that you're interested in contributing to, but you're not really sure how, one thing that really lowered the barrier for me is just joining their community Discord or Slack or whatever they use to chat, because that helped me to, I think, get familiar with the people in the community and feel like I belonged, and then feel okay with asking questions. Because I think something that people get stuck on sometimes is they pick up an issue and then they don't know how to do it, but they're too afraid to ask for help and ask questions. Like I was definitely that way. So I'm like, definitely start now in September to get familiar with the people in the community. Even maybe clone the project and get familiar with the project too, because for you to be able to contribute, you kind of have to understand how some parts of it work. Like click around in the buttons and stuff like that and be like, okay, this is how this function is firing. This is what's happening within there, so you can gain some context and then attend those events. So the three things I would say is attend the events that they have, sign up for the Discords, and go ahead and try to gain context about certain projects.
Great. That's actually a good seg for a question that I was going to ask later, which was just tell us, what your first experience was. I think you said last year was the first time you participated in Hacktoberfest. What was the experience like for you from, maybe any concerns you had at the beginning, as well as issues you ran into that were unexpected obstacles, and then how it felt at the end to actually, having done Hacktoberfest and maybe a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, oh my God, I'm happy to talk about that. I literally have a talk about this. But basically, the first time I contributed was in August 2021. And before that, everyone always told me like you should contribute, and I was like, I don't know, like it's mad stressful. Like I would legit sit down at my computer and try to contribute, and then I'll get stressed out because I'm like, there's so many options, and the code bases look really, really big. And I also was really afraid of people like laughing at my pull request. I don't know why. Like I just thought like I would open a pull request and then people would be like, what is that? And so I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna skip
That
it.
is super relatable. Like I've definitely had that
Yeah.
same feeling.
Yeah, it feels like, oh my gosh, this is going to be written in cuneiform, and it's going to be on a billboard, and yeah, totally. I can empathize. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that y'all also felt that way, because I'm like, I'm probably writing code with experts, and they're gonna be like, girl, that is not how you do it. So I just like ignored it because I'm like, yo, I already get paid to code. I'm not gonna sit here and do this for free. But the reason why I decided to was when I got my job, when I got my offer at GitHub. B Dougie messaged me and he was like, you should probably try contributing to open source if you're gonna work here. And I was like, all right, he has a good point. Um, but what I decided to change is some of those things that I mentioned earlier is like introducing myself in the Discord that helped me get like a human sense or feel for the people. I was like, okay, these are not like gods or anything. They're normal, they're nice, they're happy to have me within their community, and they all were like, oh, we'll help you if you need it. And also I took some more time to like go through the code base and figure out what the project was doing, because before I would just pick up any issue that I saw and I would be like, oh, maybe this, and then I would be like, oh my God, I don't understand what it's saying, or I don't understand what the project even does. So just taking that step back and moving slower and introducing myself to people changed everything, and now I feel good. Like I contribute to projects a lot now.
Yeah, it was just getting over maybe the fear factor you mentioned at the beginning. I like to think of that label of Hacktoberfest on a repo or an issue as like the welcome mat. Like, don't worry, we know you're, I don't know, riding a bike and you're gonna fall off a few times. Like, that's expected. Feel free. Like, it's trying to create that safe space. Do you remember which repositories and issues you picked for Hacktoberfest?
For Hacktoberfest?
Yeah.
Oh shoot, I don't know if I remember. I
Okay.
remember the first project I did, and that was open source. I know
Okay.
that, but I don't remember.
Oh, that's B Dougie's project. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
That
Okay.
was
made
one of
it
the
easier.
first I didn't necessarily contribute to, but that was the first Discord server I ever joined. It was one of the first like Twitch channels that I started watching. So like there's a long lineage of people B Dougie has gotten into this world.
Yeah,
It
really.
was my first PR.
Oh my God, you too?
That's
Yeah,
what's
on
up.
on open source.
I told her to join open source.
B Dougie's gonna be on the show tomorrow. I'm so excited to like keep sharing Hacktoberfest tomorrow too. Yay!
Yes. Oh my
Oh, that's
God,
awesome.
good job.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's fantastic. And I noticed we've got Filip on the stage now. I want to get to Filip. We're at the halfway point. So let me pause. Let Scott do a station break. And then I'll have maybe a question or two for Filip, and we'll turn it to more of the audience format. Again, feel free to raise your hands in the second half of the hour and ask our panelists questions. We love when the audience gets interactive. So Scott, I'll take it to you, and then we can go to the second half.
Absolutely. And I don't want to exclude anybody, So
Yeah.
let's say, hey, you know what? If you want to be a panelist too, then just raise your hand, right? It doesn't matter. Everybody's a panelist. Come on now.
Yeah, we've
All
got
right.
the Hacktoberfest label on the entire.
Right.
The JavaScript Jam Live is exactly that. Anyone can come up. Sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely. All right. So, hey, it is halfway through. Thank y'all so much for joining us so far. This has been so much fun. Rizel, thank you for telling us your story about Hacktoberfest and how that came about and now where you're at today. Really awesome to see where you've come from with all that. It's just incredible, and what you're doing in the community. We all love it. Thank you for sharing. And please continue to share throughout the rest of this as well. So JavaScript Jam is basically like an open mic type thing, right? Everybody can come up. That's what we keep saying. We really mean it. Please request. It makes it more fun, adds a lot more value. In fact, some of our most fun and engaging conversations have come from people coming up from the audience and contributing. Whether that's sharing your opinion or asking a question, we'd love to hear from you. And it doesn't matter whether you're a beginner at this or you've been doing this for forever. We'd love to hear from everybody. It really does make for some great listening. Yeah, don't forget to join us next week as well. We're here Wednesdays, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Good time. Thank y'all so much. And oh, by the way, you know what? We also have this awesome thing called a newsletter. I don't know if you ever heard of such things. Kind of weird. I don't know. But yeah, we have one of those. So if you actually click on JavaScript Jam, go to our profile, we now make it super easy, and you can click on it and subscribe. How cool is that? So easy. You don't have to leave the platform. It's amazing. So click on that subscribe today so you don't miss out on all the amazing upcoming things that we put out there for y'all to know about and participate in and be a part of, including JavaScript Jam Live. All right, back to you, Ishan. Thanks.
Okay.
Guys.
So thank you, Scott. So Filip, I'm really glad you're here because Filip, for those who don't know, is the co-founder of one of the most popular open source frameworks, Vue Storefront. And I'm really curious to get your perspective as a maintainer on Hacktoberfest. What are you doing from the maintainer side, and what should other maintainers would you recommend they do to prepare for Hacktoberfest, and what is it like from the maintainer perspective?
Hey Ishan, thanks so much for inviting me. It's always great to talk with you. You set the expectations rather high, but I will try to live up to them. And actually, I never, and don't kick me off right after I say it, I never participated in Hacktoberfest, but from the perspective of someone contributing. I was always participating as someone maintaining the project for 5 years already. And maybe what I can say is I could tell a little bit from the perspective of maintainer what are the most common issues, because the reality is that when the Hacktoberfest is starting, you're getting a lot of contributions.
Yeah.
Everyone wants t-shirts. And I'm glad that this year they're actually not allowing to do spam pull requests, which was super common. So basically all the popular repositories, they were always getting a lot of pull requests where people were correcting a typo or doing some really weird stuff that provides zero value. And it's definitely not in pair with the strategy and vision of the maintainers of the project. So the first thing I would advise to do before contributing to any project is basically not trying to figure out on your own what you want to do. Just pick the issue, pick an issue that is well described, that is marked as good first issue, and do exactly as they said. Because a lot of contributors to open source projects try to do things on their own or come up with the inventions on their own without really consulting it with the maintainers, without understanding like what are actually the reasons behind some certain decisions. And then those people, they are putting a lot of work into this, and in the end, you can't merge it. And it's a fail on both sides. Like The contributors, they are let down. They're probably not going to contribute. The maintainers are also not so happy because quality contributions are not such a popular thing. They are rare. And when you have a quality contribution, someone who actually put an effort to do this contribution, to write this code and to describe everything properly, if this is not in pair with what you want, it's just discouraging, both sides. The second thing is read the contribution guide. On every GitHub repository, you usually have this contributing.md file. And in this file, you have all the rules described, like how you should propose the pull request, what is the branching convention, what are the coding conventions. Also, please read that before, because you will spare a lot of time on yourself, but also the people maintaining those projects. Because again, during Hacktoberfest, a lot of job of the maintainers basically responding to those issues and linking contribution guides and saying, hey, can you please correct the name of the pull request or the name of the branch or this or that. Basically, everything is written down. So please also do that. And the third thing is, don't be scared to ask. This is maybe not completely related to Hacktoberfest, but in general contributions. So when we had a contributions days to Vue Storefront, which is kind of like a Hacktoberfest, but one day and scope only to one repository, a lot of people speaking up on issues. A lot of people start to work on them, but then they are encountering some blockers, something that is not allowing them to actually proceed. And really not many of them is asking questions, going to the maintainers, asking questions on Discord or somewhere else. I don't know why. Probably, they just feel a little bit anxious and insecure about this. But the truth is, this is exactly what maintainers are used to. This is exactly what they are waiting for. You really want the contributions, because for every open source project is a huge help. But it's a bad contribution is a waste of time of the maintainer, because you're spending a lot of time on correcting this, going round and another round and another round. And in the end, it's, you are spending 10 times more time on it, and the maintainer is also spending a lot of their time. So quality of contribution, being well prepared. In case you're blocked, don't hesitate to ask questions. This is what I would really advise. And of course, no garbage pull requests that are not what the contributors are asking for, or what the maintainers are asking for. So that would be my advice. And this is something, I was dealing with throughout the years. Of course, it really sounds like I am complaining, etc. But the truth is, we got a lot of great contributions, really. And Hacktoberfest is a really nice initiative, and a lot of people that actually contributed for the first time to Vue Storefront kept doing this. So I really appreciate, this value of Hacktoberfest, that it's also a nice icebreaker, a way for people to enter the open source space. But always try to think from the bigger perspective, not only from the perspective of you contributing to the project and what you will get out of this, but also thinking how would this fit into the bigger picture. Does it make sense? What is important? I think this is the best way to make a contribution to any project. And this year, it doesn't even have to be a code contribution. It could be some sort of advocacy, a talk, whatever. So it all depends what you want to achieve. But if your goal is to find a nice project that you want to support and provide value, probably the best way to do this is just by asking the maintainer of this particular project what is most needed.
That's really, really helpful perspective. I mean, one thing I think we maybe glossed over is when you submit your PR for it to qualify as one of the 4 for Hacktoberfest, it has to be marked by the maintainer as Hacktoberfest-accepted for exactly that reason, that it's not a spam. And, folks should remember, being a maintainer can be a thankless job. Like, you may or may not be getting paid to do it in your full time. And so you don't want to overload our poor maintainers with, spam PRs. And I actually had this experience a few years ago. I was making a contribution to a PR into a repository, but I knew somebody in the team, on the core team, but one of the people assisting them saw it and was like, "Oh, we're not accepting Hacktoberfest contributions," and I had to say, "No, wait, this is not part of Hacktoberfest." But they're so inundated, they see all these new contributions from out of nowhere, and they sometimes get overwhelmed. Have you faced that issue of being too overwhelmed during Hacktoberfest? Have you had issues where you've got more than one person, duplicating effort on the same issue, or have you had either of those issues come up for you guys?
Well, I will speak from myself, like personally, not very often. Of course, there were some situations, but I think this is mostly happening on bigger repositories. So I have some friends, for example, in Vue.js core team, and for them it is a plug. This is why I'm saying so much about, thinking about what you're gonna do, double checking everything, reading the code of conduct, reading the contribution guide, because in the end, there, of course, there is some sort of selfish motivation for that, but I also believe that most of the people contribute to open source for altruistic reasons. And if we're already spending time on this, well, let's prepare for that to make this time most valuable.
Yeah, that makes sense. So again, we are in the audience phase of this, so feel free to, raise your hand in the bottom of your Twitter Spaces interface and ask our panelists any questions you might want to ask. A question back to you, Rizel. For your first Hacktoberfest, experience, give folks a sense of how much time it took you. If you remember, do you have a ballpark memory of how long it took? For your first, maybe even for the first contribution? I guess the second, third, and fourth were faster, but how much time do you feel like it took, to give people a sense?
Maybe I picked up a really easy good first issue.
Yeah.
So maybe it took me 2 or 3 days, and then probably could have taken me 1 day, but I wanted to take some time to I know Philip mentioned reading the contributing guidelines and stuff like that. I wanted to take time to actually read all the documentation that was there. And I was still doing my full-time job. So I think it took me 2 to 3 days, and then the other ones took me just that 1 day.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if when you've talked to other people, is that about par for the course for a first time Hacktoberfest, participant?
I'm not sure because I haven't talked to other people, but I have paired with people to help them make their first contribution. And I would say when I sat down with them, it maybe took us 2 hours for them to be able to make a first contribution because they had to set up their environment and everything.
Got it. I really like that suggestion on pairing. I think that's a great way, maybe if folks are scared or intimidated, or just for accountability, just you say you're gonna have a New Year's resolution and you say it publicly, or you do it with you're exercising, right? They say do it with a friend. I really like that as a suggestion.
Or create a stream and then bring on guests for your stream to make them.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I really like that suggestion of pairing as a way to help make that activation energy lower to participate. And it brings down the time. I mean, 2 hours to make your first Hacktoberfest, PR is a reasonable amount of time. Maybe just for anybody on the panel here, what are maybe the downsides of Hacktoberfest? We've spent a lot of this time telling people to get started. What might be the unanticipated downsides? Are there reasons not to participate, or unanticipated or unintended or surprising things about Hacktoberfest?
I could start. I wouldn't say these are reasons to not participate. You should participate, but there are things to watch out for.
Scott, you muted everyone.
No, that was me. Somebody put a request in and then retracted it, and by the time I hit the button, it changed. That same space is reused for mute everyone. Yeah. And so I apologize, Rizel. Keep going.
Oh, I didn't even realize I was muted. I don't know what I was I can start over. But basically, these are not really you shouldn't participate, but just be aware of Hacktoberfest is super spammy. People just want to get their green squares a lot of times. Like that's just a goal for people, so they will just hop in and make unnecessary contribution, like Philip was mentioning.
Yeah.
So watch out for those as a maintainer and a contributor. Don't be that person either. And watch out for. I think it's a good thing to look out for if a project has good documentation, like contributing guidelines and all that. Because if not, that's a good indicator that the project's not well organized, that it's not inclusive, because they're not thinking about their community.
Those are good callouts. Anybody else on the panel?
Watch out for PRs trying to inject crypto mining software into your open source projects.
Is that a real thing or a joke? Or
I mean, it's usually pretty obvious because like you'll look at your PR, you'll be like, "What's this entirely new binary package that you're inserting for no reason whatsoever?" But yeah, it can happen.
Didn't that happen to Tesla with like when they named their car? Somebody injected stuff.
Lots of people are trying to hack Tesla cars. Yes, that's one of the primo things to hack. But yeah, that's not really a Hacktoberfest worry. It's more like a general open source supply chain thing.
Wait, so somebody hacked it so the car was busy crypto mining when you drove?
I don't know all the details, but they went through and did it through the area that you can name your car. Yeah. And because it wasn't set up to not allow code, it didn't scan it for code or anything. It just allowed you to put in whatever.
Siraj Revolve, mined Bitcoin and Ethereum, and his Tesla. This is a publicity stunt.
Oh, wow. So validate those inputs, kids. Bobby drop tables.
Hey, Brian made it.
But I do have like something.
Yeah, I invited him up.
Something that is a question, but also a like think it could be a bad thing that may happen. Yeah. Okay, if I'm brand new and have never talked to anybody and just barely starting to code, and I mean, two parts. Where would I start? I get like, you want to find things that say Hacktoberfest and do things there. But then second, like the terrifying one of like, who do you choose? Are they actually going to help? Will the community reply? And I know that Open Sauce, and yes, B Dougie, I'm talking about you, but I was talking about you before you were here. Everybody was. Like that Discord is really active, but like how to ensure that you're getting the support you need instead of like shying away.
I don't know, Brian, if you have. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, maybe Brian would want to say something about that.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just like trying to catch up. What was the actual question?
Instead of 7 questions at once, I'm totally going to be asking you these tomorrow. By the way,
perfect.
The first one is, how do we choose like which open source to contribute to? Like, how do people find who to contribute to? And then the second question.
Boy, there was a startup around finding your next open source contribution.
Okay, not everybody is going to know that. So, like, if that didn't exist, like, how would you go search for it to know?
Yeah, I would. So there's like this, and I guess the topic around here is Hacktoberfest. I literally just jumped in. I was like in calls all morning. Hacktoberfest is a great opportunity to get introduced to a lot of projects or a lot of open source contributing. And the thing that I was trying to solve like the past year with open source is like, how do you discover projects? So we have hotopensauce.pizza, which is like the explore page for finding projects. Still needs a lot of work. It's literally, you can contribute to it. Like, I would love people to contribute to it. I've got issues open. But I also, like, it's also harder, like, when the bigger projects don't actually want contributions. So, like, Angular is a good example. Like, they have mostly Google engineers that are contributing to it. There are other people who contribute there, but I wouldn't recommend Angular as a good first repo. But if you had like a random, like, so Brandon Roberts actually has this project called Analog, which takes Angular and connects it to Vite. So it's like a modern way to look at Angular is modern, but it's a different way to look at Angular. Like that could use way more contribution and insight and issues and documentation than the actual Angular repo. So I would start with what you're using and what you could potentially open an issue on, because like the best thing you could do is open an issue on things that are legitimately broken. And the only way you can do that is by using stuff. So that's like my first recommendation. I've got other answers, but I'll wait for other questions.
I think that the problem with that one for like really, really beginners is they're like, well, I'm using React. Like they don't even like know kind of a more fine grained thing that they could be using that they can contribute to.
Yeah, well, that's a good pushback too as well, because my recommendation is go build something in React or build something hard in React, because you're going to find some issues pretty quickly by just using React ecosystem tooling. But also it's the like I want a 6-pack. Like I back years ago I had a 6-pack. I do not have one now. But like I know what the steps are to get a 6-pack. Like I got to eat vegetables and I got to stand up and go walk or go work out. And I think it's the same thing. Like people want to contribute to open source and look like have their rock hard abs, like their contributor graph. If we can make those green squares in a 6-pack, like people want that, but they don't know what the steps are to even get there. And that comes from, I think, what Jen, you were kind of alluding to, is like sitting in a Discord and looking at conversation and joining in the conversation is going to provide way more value and get you more insight to know, okay, this person built these 3 features in the last week that I've been sitting here in this Discord. Maybe I can ask them about, hey, I have a question. Like, how did you even approach caching? Or how did you approach this? Or next time, can I review one of your PRs before you merge them, type of deal? Like,
yeah, I think the suggestion of like analog, like what Brandon's doing, is like that's what I would tell people is like look for projects that are newer, because like the problem with Angular is that there's already like a whole thing around it. So there's like processes and there's a team and there's like, release cadences. Whereas if you find people who are just like building stuff, who are just like individuals, like they're going to need help and they like are going to be actively like looking for people to help them. So I think finding projects in the right part of their life cycle is really important.
And I like the suggestion to be part of the conversation. Like whether that means being a user of it first to see where the pain points are or something you naturally have encountered, but to view that as, the start of your journey and look at it as a journey of which the pull request is one towards the end of that journey rather than the sole goal and the beginning of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Brian. Honestly, I think most importantly is please tell me how I can get 6-pack abs by just standing up and eat vegetables. That would be
it only takes 8 minutes.
8 minutes. That's awesome. Rizel, you have your hand up. What's up?
Wait, when Jen asked that question, I just remembered that like another way is both me and Brian have been hosts of Open Source Friday, which is a thing that a stream that GitHub does where they talk to different open source projects. That's another way that people can explore or discover small open source projects, because we both tend to like interview people that don't have like the largest projects ever and that are easier for you to get your foot started, or whatever I'm trying to say, but get started. I pinned the playlist to this Twitter space.
Yeah,
so
same thing with FS Jam. Like having friends who are like deeply into this stuff and like talk to a million people, it's like that's actually the real hack. Then we could just be like, here's 10, go forth.
Yeah, be sure to check out that link. It's at the top here, which Rizel shared, has the Discord in there and everything. So I'm sure there's lots of good information that you can jump on there as well. So yes, awesome. Thank y'all so much for sharing all this wonderfulness. I mean, it's been so cool so far. We've only got a few minutes left here, but I did want to just go ahead and mention, if you guys are out there listening to this right now in the audience now, or even from the replay, be sure to click on the face of the person you're getting value from here, and follow them if you're not already, because I guarantee you're going to get value from them in other places as well, not just here. So, not to mention JavaScript Jam wouldn't mind the follow too. So, but thank y'all so much for joining us. Thank you for everybody who came here to speak and answer questions. But yeah, Ishan, I don't know if you want to spend the next few minutes kind of closing things up and anything else.
Well, I'll just say again, thank you for everyone who joined us both in the audience and on the panel. Maybe we close it out with a lightning round on just, we haven't really talked directly on this, but why you should participate in Hacktoberfest. Maybe if we go around in a 1 or 2 sentence to the panel, if people want to give their opinion, feel free to just come off mute and jump in.
Internet points. Get those sweet internet points. You know you want them.
Because I want to be cool like all of you and understand what I'm doing. And this is going to be great practice. And also because everybody talks about like open source, and BW was the first person that ever helped me with my PR. And it gives me like a goal to do it instead of just like, I don't know what I'm working on, I'm just going to do it. It like is a reason to work on it.
I do it for the t-shirt if they're doing that this year.
They are.
But the real more educational answer is probably open source can open up doors that you normally wouldn't have open. Like you could potentially contribute to the right project where you meet these people that could be your future coworkers if they like the work you do. For those reasons alone, I think like that's just a good reason outside of just leaving your comfort zone, being able to feel humility if someone bashes your code. Hopefully you don't bash it, but give you like good feedback and stuff like that. And if you're not someone that actually works on the team, you just stay at home and you're currently learning, it gives you like that team feel of getting the code reviews you normally wouldn't get when you're working on projects yourself too. Those are just some quick pointers.
Dang, the trash. Oh wait, BW is about to talk. Go ahead.
Oh no, you please go.
I was just gonna say that I don't know your name, but it says trash. You basically said everything I was gonna say. The only thing I will add is you'll get experience on working on with technologies and different projects that you might not be getting a chance to work on at work. So you'll like expand your horizon.
Nice. I was just going to jump in real quick to share a quick story. So I have a friend who worked on the Periscope team, which is the current app that we're using, Twitter, and the Spaces is Periscope technology. He ended up selling the product to Twitter, and they built out Twitter Spaces, and then he left. And he had some time off and wanted to contribute to open source, so he built the virtual cam for OBS on Mac. It was like a bugged version, and he ended up fixing it, and he became the sole maintainer, and then got super burnt out and found a 16-year-old, found the project, opened issues, and he mentored that 16-year-old 2 years ago to eventually become the maintainer of that thing before it got merged into upstream to OBS. What I'm getting at is why do this? Is because that person who worked on the Periscope team is now the mentor of that now 18-year-old who's now getting jobs in tech. And you don't know what you're gonna if you want to contribute to React, start contributing or start using React in 2014. Obviously, you can't go back in time. So what Anthony said earlier is find projects that need help today and that are smaller and that can take you and mentor you into your next thing 2 years later, because you don't know who you're working with and what you can collaborate on.
Wow, that's a great way to end today's session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Y'all have been wonderful. Seriously. Give it a high five, clap, hearts, all that good stuff for everybody up here that was contributing. Give it to yourself, give it to your buddy, pat you on the back. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. All right, don't forget, we do this every week on Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Join us here on JavaScript Jam Live, where we talk about everything JavaScript and web development related. I think we've already got a little bit of a topic from Anthony earlier that we're going to be talking about next week. WASM, all that good stuff in the browser. Hey. All right. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, don't party too hard, okay? But have fun.
I'll party as hard as I want, Scott. How dare you?
Contribute to that open source, folks. And if you need or have any questions, you can come to anybody here. Rizel, C. Dougie, I'm sure Anthony, they'd all be willing to answer questions you have or point you in the right direction when it comes to Hacktoberfest and open source. So hit them up. Don't overload them. All right, y'all. Love you guys so much. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, we'll see you. All right, love y'all. Until next time. See you later. Peace.